Hi, everybody. Tim here, along with Billy.
Hi, yes.
We're here for the weekly market update. This week, we thought we'd do something a little bit different, and we would dive into a specific company and them making news in the past week. So the company that we have picked for this week is Apple, which is no surprise because Apple this week released its new batch of iPhones and Apple Watches and other sort of tech products in their launch event on the 8th of September. Or sorry, 7th of September. That was yesterday in US time and early morning for us in Asia. So, Billy, I mean, what's the big news out of this release for Apple? Should investors care? And what are the ramifications of these new products?
I think actually there is quite a bit of impact from this round. If you look at the announcement, that I think the biggest surprise is the pricing, that there is no price hike for the iPhone 14 lineup. And I think this is a sign, and as in it just shows that Apple is able to read the temperature of the room. With all the rising costs and everything, I think it just makes sense to keep it at its as level, because I think the iPhone is no longer just a luxury product. It has become as an essential product where people probably change it every 3 or 4 years, so depending on your cycle of usage. So I guess this, in a sense, it gives that indication that the management knows what they're doing, and I think it's probably a good sign. I mean, in terms of the product wise, I guess there's nothing much of a surprise from Apple, except for the satellite features is probably the only big thing that there is to shout about. Aside from that, it's basically business as usual for the Apple. I think they talk about the fastest processors that they have, which they're using the 4 nanometer, so which is better than what is in the industry. So they are also able to manage their supply chain. So if you look at, I think the pre-order starts today in Singapore, right? So so delivery, I think, is on 16. So it just shows that they are in a way on track, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I guess this is that was a big surprise. Not raising prices given the inflation that we're seeing in the economy. So because of that, do you think that the business might be absorbing some of the costs and margins might come down a little bit on this product set, or do you think that they will make it up in terms of other revenue streams?
I think in terms of margin and everything, it's definitely going to see some compression, right? I mean, it's not just because of the pricing and the inflationary. I mean, the strong dollar itself will also have an impact on earnings for Apple. So I think in the near term, margin will definitely be affected. But I think what it shows is the shift that Apple has in terms of, I think they're moving towards services as their main focus to drive that. You look at how much they're invested in Apple TV and everything else. So I think it just shows that trend. I mean, even the latest product that they have, I think they'll launch this Apple Watch Ultra, which is targeting the athletes, the professional athletes. And there are some link up with the Apple Fitness services that they are offering. So I think it's about building that ecosystem, and it's just I think that's the shift that we are looking into. I mean, the latest quarter, if you look at Apple's results, I think about $19.6 billion is coming from services. That includes your Apple Store, Apple Care, iCloud, and everything else. But it just shows it grows to, I think, 25% of the group's total revenue. So it just shows that shift. And I think, like I said earlier, I think it's about becoming an essentials for everyday usage rather than a luxury goods itself. So I think that's really the kind of shift that we are looking into.
Yeah. No, I found that interesting as well, because obviously traditionally it was a hardware play, about a decade ago or even in the past 5 years, and they've really shifted into services. And then with the Apple Watch, I also read that one of the features was for women, they're able to track their ovulation cycles through the watch and changes in their temperature or core temperature and when they're ovulating. So I think it shows that they're also moving into wellness and fitness and health. So I think that's obviously going to be a massive market for its services business, right? So as you were saying, it's moving away from the whole luxury hardware approach and angle. And I think maybe pushing themselves or nudging users rather towards the sort of wellness, fitness, and value added services that they can charge more. And I assume on that basis, margins for services will be a lot better than margins for hardware, as we're probably aware. Software margins are going to be better, aren't they? So So I think that's a key thesis for the stock. But you're right on the whole exchange rate front. I think that's going to impact Apple this year. Any company really that has a global business with the strong dollar, the dollar's at a really strong point right now in terms of its value versus other currencies. And I guess the euro is at an all-time low or close to an all-time low versus the dollar, right? So that's going to be impacting Apple's business as well. So, I mean, beyond the obvious short-term problems or short-term obstacles, what's one other issue that you think Apple's really going to have to contend with this year?
I think competition is one area that Apple probably had to contend with. I think if you look at in terms of innovation wise, we have not really seen from Apple. I mean, you look at Samsung, they're coming out with foldable phones and everything. I mean, yes, I mean, traditionally we know Apple has been slower to adapt to new technology, but it's all about customer experience in their view, right? But I think this is probably like the fourth iteration of the fold version now, and Apple has not yet ventured into that area. So it just shows that I think there's a bit of too much emphasis on the services itself and probably on that front, which is why they're lacking when you look at on the innovation front. So you don't really see a lot coming from Apple. I mean, they have really great cameras features and everything, but I mean, in a way the device are so good, it just there isn't any reason for you to change your phone that often, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess you have to bring in that new innovation, and if they are to continue to lag behind their rivals, that we could probably see some shift lah. I think that's the concern, because at the end of the day, it's about building that. I think they're trying to build that ecosystem. They have a loyal fan base, which is great. I mean, in US, I think they have about 50% now users of iPhone.
Using
so
iPhones,
I guess,
yeah.
I mean, considering the pricing, I mean, iPhone is probably the most premium smartphone then, and they have that 50%. So they have that, leeway to take their time to develop certain new technologies. But we still have to see it lah. Because personally, as someone who follows tech and everything, I do want to see some innovation on Apple front, because I mean, it's nice to have good photos, good videos and everything, but it's also more than that. And I think Apple is not doing enough on that front. So that's probably, I mean, on a longer term, that's probably going to be a concern lah.
Yeah. No, I think there's talk about them doing the car, but then we haven't really seen much, publicity or anything concrete around that. So that just seems to be hearsay at this point.
Yeah,
I think all of us are waiting for like the next big thing, right? I mean, I feel like the iterations of the iPhone have been good. It's obviously gotten better computing power, better camera, but there's nothing been that revolutionary about this whole evolution of the phone, I guess.
I mean, the thing is, Apple, I mean, they're doing what they're good at, right? The management of the supply chain, they're very good at it. So they continue to excel in those things. But you don't see new things, like you don't talk about mixed reality headsets. You don't have all that. There have been talks about it, but you don't really see it. And of course, if you talk about Apple Car, I think it's a very big shift away from the smartphone ecosystem lah. So I'm just guessing that we need to see something, at least on that front, from them.
Yeah. That's true. But I guess for investors that are more conservative and still want exposure to tech, it seems to be one of those names that it's business as usual, right? I mean, it's chugging along well. The iPhone has an ecosystem, so as a captive audience, it pays a dividend. It's buying back a lot of shares, and fundamentals continue to be robust, right? So I think in the short term, although there are some challenges, it seems as though the business is going to be chugging along as normal. Is that correct?
I do think so. Just that, I mean, when we talk about share buybacks, I think that's also one area that we probably want to look at Apple in a sense. I think we probably will see some. I'm expecting some slower share buybacks from the company itself, because I think if you look at how they've been funding the share buybacks, it's coming a lot from borrowings, which is a good strategy, because I mean, during the low interest rate environment, there's not much you could do with, it's good to tap on the borrowings and take advantage of the low interest. But right now with the rising interest rates and I think the next 5 years, we should see quite a big chunk of the debt that will come to maturity for Apple. So we should probably see some of those. I don't expect the management to renew this debt and then to put it into share buybacks, given the rising interest rate environment. So with that in mind, I think that should be one area that investors should also take note of. I mean, At least that's my view, lah. I'm not so sure about what you think on that front.
Yeah, no. I agree. I mean, it doesn't make much sense taking, borrowing at higher rates and then buying back shares. I mean, me personally, I would probably prefer them to pay a higher dividend, because share buybacks, you can adjust accordingly up and down. Whereas dividends, if you paid out, I think shareholders like to see that continue to go up. And Apple's done a pretty decent job of growing that dividend. I mean, they tend to, on average, grow at around 10% a year. So it's only yielding less than 1%, but it's rising higher than the rate of inflation, at least in Asia. So I think that's a positive, a positive takeaway for me. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it makes sense to borrow to buy back shares. I think that should probably be a thing of the past.
I think from what from what you just said, I think what we can see is that there's a shift. Apple is no longer just a tech player per se. I think it's becoming more like an essential play for us. Look at the way that the pricing that they are fixing it for the Apple iPhone, and of course their push for their services in the sector. So it just shows that shift, and the fact that they are able to generate a sustainable cash and give out dividend. I think they are turning into a different company. It's no longer just growth.
Growth at all costs. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, great. That was a good sort of summary, I think, of the event and the business. Thank you for joining us this week, and we will catch you next week.
Yep. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.